All right. So we've been seeing kind of a variation of like lowball offers recently.
Yes.
How do you tell sellers how to handle those without them becoming super emotional? And what do you do to counter that?
Well, I'm already emotional enough for all of us, A word that I don't love is when somebody says that they're insulted by an offer. And I just think, don't get insulted. It's just real estate. It's just a transaction. It's a word that I think kind of gets overused a lot of times with agents, especially. Like, my client was super insulted by your offer, or my client's insulted by your, lack of offer. I think that really the first thing, number one thing, is just understand the offer and understand why did they come in at that price and lowball, in air quotes, lowball.
And I think on the buyer side, what some buyers will tell their agents, or they see news stories or headlines that maybe the market is falling apart, or we're seeing so many homes sell for under list price. But the thing is, like, that's very specific to each neighborhood and each home. If the home's been on the market for 100+ days, okay, well, it's likely overpriced, or there's something wrong with it potentially. So just because the home's been on the market for a long time doesn't mean you can go in 10% under. I mean, you got to think about the seller has a ton of equity in the home likely, and they're not just going to take your
Buyer's thing.
offer, right? So as a seller, you just need to understand, okay, the seller or the buyer is trying to get the best deal. They're just throwing out a number. The good thing is you have an offer to work with. Right?
That's actually the key point that I was about to make, is we call it a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. And, it's kind of an old age adage, but it really does make sense. We have the offer in hand, so let's try to work with it. So my second point is to stay calm and collected and just, take in all the data. Sometimes us as listing agents, we've already told our seller what is most likely going to happen or what we think the price is. And sometimes they don't agree. They sometimes think their house is worth more. They put the new roof on, or they've done some updates that really matter to them. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. It just means sometimes it doesn't equate to the same dollar amount. So, we just have to look at the facts, look at what the macro and the micro market is doing, what that neighborhood is doing. And again, like you said, if it's been on the market for 100 or 200 days, well, there's probably something going on, and it's become what we call tire kick. I also want to tell everybody, please, for the love of God, stop asking ChatGPT or AI what they should do, what you should do, because I think, all too often it's a very cool thing. It does pull great comps, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an edge, as a seller and a buyer, but it's not always accurate. And that's what you hire us to do. I'm not saying we're more accurate than a robot, but we have the emotional check-in that we can give better advice, I think, than ChatGPT. So if ChatGPT told you to do 10% below list, that's probably not necessarily always a good idea. But the next point is countering with confidence,
Right.
So how do you usually?
We always tell our sellers, and our buyers, we work in 3 steps, right? So one is just getting the offer accepted, right? That's the tough part. And then there's going to be a whole nother negotiation during the second part, which is the inspection period. Even if you're come in a little bit low, right, initially, or counter a little bit below, just below your list price, I should say, just so you show, all right, I'm negotiating good faith, but knowing we still have to go through an inspection period. And unless you did a pre-home inspection, you might not know what's going to come up, right? Because we don't go necessarily in our attics or crawl space, or, we're not inspectors. So just keep that in mind. So a lot of sellers don't want to accept a low ball offer knowing, all right. Unless you're going to take it in as-is condition, I'm not going to accept your $100,000 under list.
But also, I say in air quotes, lowball. Everybody has a different version of what a lowball offer is. Some people might be insulted by 10,000. Some people might be insulted by 100,000. But I think the key is countering with confidence part is a key aspect here. Don't just get so worked up and say, I'm not even going to consider this offer because they wrote it so low in my eyes that I'm not willing to take it. So what we want to do is find that middle ground. Tony used to have a lawyer that used to say, hey, my job isn't done until everybody walks away unhappy. Our job is actually to try to get everybody to walk away happy. So we're actually the opposite. That's one thing that makes us the opposite. So we just want to try to come up with that fair price. And a lot of times we'll know as seller, or we'll know as listing agents what the seller is willing to take. But we still want to just get to the point where everybody is mutually benefiting with that offer. And most of the time lowball offers are just a starting point. That does not mean that that's where you're going to end up. So
right. The last thing I would say is just know when to walk away, right?
Yeah.
If you get an offer that is so low and they're not willing to negotiate with your counteroffer, it's likely time just to walk away, because that's not really a serious buyer. It could be somebody looking, way out of their price range, and they're like, well, let's just throw in an offer to see if we get it.
I usually tell our buyers when we're working with buyers, it's so much easier to work with a seller when you go closer to their price, their list price. That's their marketing price. That's their starting point. It doesn't mean that they won't come off of it or go up a little higher, but it's so much easier to deal with somebody who seems reasonable right from the very beginning. So if you're going in 100 grand under and you're already asking for a new roof before you've even had the inspection, the seller knows immediately. We know to tell the seller, this person probably will never be reasonable. So let's counter them. Let's see if they're willing to even consider that counter. And if they're not, or they're not willing to budge, it's probably time to just let the offer die on the vine, so.
Well, when it comes to handling lowball offers, it's all about understanding the offer, staying calm, countering confidently, and knowing when to walk away. If you've dealt with a lowball offer before or have a strategy you've used, leave a comment below and let's discuss. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more real estate tips and updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.